this week. Bez Hashem, today's daf is daf Nun Dalet. So it's a very interesting week because the week, as we get into the dafim of this week, it's going to discuss all the events that led up to the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. So it's this is a famous Agarita, but we're two blot away from that. We're up to daf Nun Dalet, 54 Gittin, and we're going to start from 12 lines from the top. Okay, so I'm going to make it bigger in a second. I just want to give you an idea what we're discussing over here. What we're discussing over here is I think if you've ever experienced this we had this in our bungalow colony where a guy makes a kiddush, right? And he has the cholent there on Friday. He bought it and it's all set up in the kitchen. And another guy, a curious guy with a cup of coffee, comes over, looks inside, and spills his cup of coffee into the cholent. And now the cholent is already treif, basar b'chalav. So the question is, does he have to pay for it? Because the guy spent money on the cholent, and did he do damage? The cholent is still there. It's edible, but not for a Jew. So what's the din? So there is a machlokes in the Gemara, but we're going to paskin hezek she'ena nikar eina hezek. In other words, midaraisa, it's not a recognizable damage. There's no damage done. It's just tameh. It's just became also to eat because of somebody's negligence. So really, minatora, you don't have to pay. Midrabanan, they say, if you did it by mistake, you have to pay. If you did it on purpose, if you did it by mistake, you don't have to pay. But if you did it on purpose, you do have to pay. And this is what the machlekes tanoim is in the Mishnah, in the Brisa. And I'm just going to Nun Gimel Amid Beis, where it's more in depth. The Mishnah says, the Brisa says, it's a machlekes tanoim. Hametame, if someone's metame, somebody's truma, okay, he makes it tame. So now it's unedible for the kohen. He could only use it as firewood. Or v'hamadame, or if he mixes his if someone takes somebody's chulin and mixes it with truma, so now it becomes unedible for the Yisrael. He has to sell it to a kohen. So really, or v'hamanasech, he takes somebody else's wine and pours it for avodah zarah. Okay, so now the wine becomes unedible. So he damaged somebody's object, but not in the conventional sense of the way, because you look at it, it's the same food. In a spiritual way, he was matame somebody's truma. So does he have to pay? So Reb Meir says, and you can see it on the screen over here, Reb Meir is of the opinion, echad shoygig ve'echad mezid chayev. Whether you do it by mistake or whether you do it by purpose, chachamim are going to make you pay for that. Divrei Reb Meir. Reb Meir says that. Rabbi Yehuda said b'shoygig potter. If you do it by mistake, so Rabbi Yehuda is very lenient. He says if you do it by mistake, we let you get away with it. And same thing with my case with our bungalow colony. If the guy spilled his coffee by mistake, which I think it was, so then he wouldn't have to pay for the cholent because it's a mistake. But if he did it on purpose, then chayev, you're going to chayev to pay, not because you did damage, because midaraisa everybody holds, like we see in the Gemara, you see over there, Rav Nachman Yitzchak says everybody holds hezek she'einu nikar. If you can't tell that there is a damage there, loy shmei hezek, that's not called you damage somebody. So it's only the Rabbanan that made you pay for such a damage, which is called only if you do it on purpose, according to Rabbi Yehuda. According to Rabbi Yehuda, only if you do it on purpose. B'shoygig, you are part. If you do it by mistake, okay, you don't have to pay for it. But Rab Meir, who's very strict, he said that not only if you do it on purpose you have to pay, but if you also do it by mistake you have to pay, because we knas. If you let people get away by mistakes, they're going to get away with it. They'll do it on purpose. So konsu shoygig automezit. They made a knas by shoygig. Maybe you'll come to do it by mezit. That's what the Gemara said before. But the Gemara qualifies that Rameir only said that only if there's an issa d'rabbanan. Like here, there's no issa d'oraisa that you did. So then Rameir said you're only doing it issa d'rabbanan. You're just damaging somebody only in a d'rabbanan dig away, because midaraisa you're not really damaging somebody. Only then Rab Meir says you knas the shoygig if you do it by mistake, because you might, if we let you get away with it when you do it by mistake, you're going to get away with it when you do it on purpose. That's what Rab Meir says. Now let's go to 12 lines from the top of Nun Dalet Amud Aleph. Tov Shema, come in here. We're going to try to prove that Rab Meir does not say that you have to pay if you do it by mistake. Maybe you'll come to do it by purpose. He does not say that. Tashma, come in here. Ochal truma tameya. If a man ate truma tameya, a kohen had truma tameya. Now, if you eat the truma from a kohen, right, you have to pay the kohen back, right? If you eat his truma tahora, if you ate an apple that belonged to the kohen, it was truma, you have to pay him an apple back, okay, and maybe a fifth more. That apple that you give him of your chulin apple automatically turns into truma, okay? But what happens if a person ate truma tameya? It was tamei truma by the kohen. What was the kohen going to do with tamei truma? He was going to use it for firewood, because a kohen can't use anything. He can't eat truma tameya. So let's say a man, a Yisrael, ate the truma tameya of his kohen friend without permission, of course. So how does he make it up? Mishalem chulin tahorim. He has to pay him back with chulin that's tahar. So it's a chulin tahar, and that chulin tahorin becomes truma. So not only that, the kohen's going to receive back truma tahora, because when the Yisrael pays him back the chulin tahorin, it's going to turn into truma tahora. Now, what happens? So that's a punishment. You can see right away that's a punishment for the guy. He's paying more than what he damaged, because the kohen's going to have truma tahora, which is worth more than truma tameya. Shilem chulin tameim, but let's say he paid back chulin tameim, tamei true chulin, which means that it's going to revert, when you give it to the kohen, it's going to revert into truma tameya. Mahu, what would be the din? You didn't follow what the chachamim said. You did something that you're not supposed to do. You paid him back with chulin tameim. Alma sumchas mishum rameir. Simcha said in the name of the rameir, bishoigig, if you paid it to the kohen by mistake, you gave him chulin tameim instead of you're supposed to give him chulin tahirim. Tashlumin. Okay, we let you get away with it. You already made your payment, and you don't owe anything further to the kohen, because his chulin tameim is going to return into truma tameya. B'mezid, but if you do it on purpose, and you really knew that the halach is you're supposed to give him chulin tahirim, ein tashlumin. The payment is not a good payment. The kohen gives it back, and you have to return to him chulin tahirim. So we see right away, you can see the question over here, but the Gemara is going to explain the brisa because it's not so clear. It's not the questions on this brisa, but you can see that Rameir says b'shoigig we let you get away with it, and b'mezid we don't let you get away with it. So we see that Rameir is lenient when it comes to when you do things by mistake. So already you have a question, but the Gemara is going to first do some housekeeping first in explaining the brisa. The Chachamim said disagree. Echad whether you do it on purpose, whether you do it by mistake. If you pay back chulin tameim, tashlumim, you really pay the kohen. The kohen could keep it. The chayzer u'mishalem chulin tahirim, but we make you repay again the kohen chulin tahirim. You're supposed to pay chulin tahirim. If you paid him chulin tameim, the kohen says, "Thank you very much. I'm keeping it. It's my money. I could be mekadesh a woman with it, but you didn't fulfill your obligation. You're supposed to give me back chulin tahirim." So the Gemara doesn't understand why is it that if you eat truma tameya of a kohen, which the kohen wasn't going to eat anyway, the kohen was going to use truma tameya for firewood, that I have to pay him back chulin tahirim. We asked the question: if you paid back the kohen with chulin tameim b'mezid on purpose, amai ain't tashlum of tashlumim? Why isn't that considered a good payment? Tovai ala bracha, you should get a blessing. Why? The ochel mean the loy chaze lay b'timei tumasei. You ate from him chulin tameya. With the kohen wasn't going to eat that chulin. You ate from the kohen truma tameya. He wasn't going to eat it anyway, because even when the kohen is tamei, he can't eat chulin. He can't eat truma tameya. It was only supposed to be used for firewood. The komashalim lay, but now when you're paying chulin tameyim, immediately the chaze lay b'timei tumasei. Technically, prior to it turning into truma tameya, your intention is to give him something that he could use when he's tamei. When the kohen is tamei, he can eat chulin tamei. He can eat chulin tameya, albeit it's going to turn into truma tameya. But you are trying to pay him chulin tamei, which is worth more in the market. Truma tameya and chulin tameya is worth more than truma tameya. So if you eat a pound of truma tameya and you're paying chulin tamei, you should have gotten your forgiveness. The kohen should be happy with that. So something's off with this brisa. So first we explain the brisa, and then we get back to our question. Rava said, and some say it was this Amiro Kedi. His name was Kedi. He said, explain the brisa. There are missing words in this brisa, and this is what it means to say. If you took from a kohen and ate achal truma tameya, you took and ate truma tameya from a kohen. Now you owe him truma tameya, and the kohen wasn't going to use that truma tameya because he could only use it as firewood. He can't eat it. Mishalim koldu, you can pay whatever you want. You can even pay chulin tameim, because when you pay him chulin tameim, automatically that chulin tameim, when it gets to the kohen's hand, is going to turn into truma tameim. You ate truma tamei truma, and you're paying him back, which is something that's going to turn into tamei truma. But achal truma tahora. But if you eat tahor truma, which was the food of the kohen, and you ate it, mishalim chulin tahirim, you must pay him back chulin tahirim. Right? Mechulim tahirim. The Rabbanan said you're supposed to give him back chulim tahirim. Really, midaraisa, you can get away with chulin tameim. But the Rabbanan said no. If you ate chulin to truma tahira, pay him back chulin tahirim, and that's going to turn into truma tahira. Shilim chulin tameim. But if you paid him back with chulin tamei, right? If you paid him back with chulin tamei. So you didn't listen to what the Rabbanan said. Rabbanan said, pay him back with chulin tahirim, and you went ahead and paid him with chulin tameim. Mahu, what would be the din? By mistake, okay, we let you get away with it. You're forgiven. You paid back the kohen with chulin tameim, which is going to turn into truma tameya. But and you ate truma tahira. We said b'shoigig, if you do it by mistake, we let you get away with it. The mezid ain't tashlum of tashlumim. The mezid, if you do it on purpose, you didn't pay him. You didn't pay the kohen back, and you have to repay him with chulin. You have to repay him with chulin tahorim. That's what Rameir says. So right away you see that Rameir says if you do something by mistake, we let you get away with it. Right? Even this whole thing is Rabbanan. It's only if you do it by mezid, then you get the knas. And we say no. If you're trying to get away with paying chulin tameim, we say no. Your payment is not considered a payment, and you have to go back and pay him with chulin tameim. The Chachamim says is even worse. Whether you do it by mistake and whether you pay the kohen on purpose with chulin tameim, tashlum of tashlumim. Kohen could say, "Thank you very much. It's my money now." But you now have to shell out again to pay me chulin tahirim. But al kaponim. Rav Acha, the son of Rabbi Ika, explained the machlokes. Over here, the machlokes between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim is bekonsu shoygig atu meze ika benayo. Do you fine a person and punish a person when he does things by mistake? Maybe he will come to do it on purpose. The Rameir holds loy kansu. Rameir holds you don't knas a person by mistake, only if he does it on purpose. You don't fine him shoygig. Maybe he'll come to do it on purpose. The Chachamim says you do punish a person whether he does it by mistake or whether he does it on purpose. Of course, you punish him. So what we see is over here is a stira. Rab Meir, we said before, when someone's mitame, somebody's chulin, or let's say my example of the cholent. You put milk by mistake into somebody's cholent, and you made it unedible. Now it's treif. But if you did it by mistake, Rameir said over there you have to pay. So why is it? Because you might, if we let you get away when you do it by mistake, then you're going to do it on purpose. So Rameir was knasing shoygig got the mezid over there, and in here, in our case, when he's trying to pay back the kohen with trumim to make up for what he damaged the kohen, we don't knas shoygig got the mezid. We say that if you paid it back the kohen, you ate truma tahira and you paid him back chulim tameim b'shoygig. Rameir says it's okay. So how could we resolve the stira? And says the Gemara, hachi hashta, how can you compare? Awesome over there when the kohen, when the person is trying to make up to the kohen the truma tahora that he ate and he wants to pay the kohen back, gavra l'shalume kamakaven. He's trying to do something good. He's trying to pay the kohen back. By accident, he didn't know the halacha that you're supposed to pay him back chulin tahirim. He paid the kohen back chulin tameim. So therefore, Adam say, are we going to put a knas on him? I'm fine. He didn't mean to rip the kohen off. He didn't know the halacha. So therefore, we're not knasim. We say if you paid the kohen back chulin tameim, we said okay, you got away with it. You don't have. There's no further payments you have to say. But over here, when somebody goes to somebody's cholent or when somebody goes to somebody's truma and is matama it by mistake, what are you doing over there? busying yourself with somebody else's property, even if it was by mistake. So therefore, over there, we'll knas you, even if you do it by mistake. Maybe if we punish you, even if you do it by mistake, so that even when you do it on purpose, you'll know that you're going to have to pay. So we knas shoygig automazed. New question. Tashma coming here. Dam shenitma, a carbon that became tame, and the blood. Now, really, if I have a carbon and my carbon, the blood became tame, whatever, I'm about to spray it onto the mizbeach, and a sheretz falls into the blood, so it became tame. So really, technically, midaraisa, I'm allowed to spray it onto the mizbeach and yotze my carbon. It's tame blood. The answer is the kohen wore a special headband called the tzitz that forgave all these type of averos. But midrabanan, you're not supposed to. Rabbanan said, if you know that it became tame, throw away the blood. So dam shenitba, dam that became tame, uzrakai, and the guy, the kohen went ahead and sprayed it onto the mizbeach. Bishoigig, if he did it by mistake, hortza, it's a good carbon, and don't worry about it. You can eat the meat of the carbon. Let's say it was a shlamim. You could eat the meat of the carbon, even though the kohen should have not thrown it onto the mizbeach. But the Yevid, it's okay if he did it by mistake. B'meizid, if he knew that it was tamei and went purposely to the mizbeach and poured it onto the mizbeach and sprinkled it onto the mizbeach, loy hortza, the carbon is not a good carbon, and not only that, the meat becomes also to eat. So we see from there, and this brisa is Rav Meir, and we see that by shoygig he lets you get away with it. By mezid, Rav Meir is very strict, and of course this whole idea is anyway drabanan, and so therefore Rav Meir should say that we shouldn't let you get away with it, even if you do it by mistake. Even by mistake, the carbon should not be eaten. So why do we say Rav Meir says it could be eaten? But shoygig hortza, amalach Rav Meir will tell you hachi hashta. How can you compare? Hasam over there, Gavra lekapure kol makavin. He is really trying to get a forgiveness, and the kohen by mistake threw it onto the mizbech. He's trying to do some good. When you're trying to do some good, we don't knas you. If the mistake happened because you're trying to do something good, right? You're trying to bring the carbon, so we let you get away with it if you did an avera by mistake, and we don't punish you, we don't fine you with that. But over here, again, when a guy goes over to somebody else's property and is metame the food, right, or he's medama the food, he made it, he damaged it in such a way, we say to him, we punish you shoygig automazid. Because what are you doing by somebody else's property? Even if it's by mistake, this is a mistake that we're going to punish you with. And that's Rav Meir's opinion. Tashma, come in here. Hama'asa b'Shabbos b'shoygig. Hama'asa b'Shabbos. You take off maisrus on your fruits on Shabbos. Well, you know, you're not supposed to take off maisrus on fruits on Shabbos. Why not? Because you're fixing it. Really, it's unedible. Midday Raisa. Why can't I just take off of maisrus on Shabbos? Chachamim said don't do it because it looks like you're fixing something on Shabbos. So if you're doing this Isser D'Rabbanan of maisering on Shabbos, b'shoygig, if you do it by mistake, yoichal, you can eat the food. B'meizid, if you do it on purpose, lo yoichal, don't eat the food. And this is going according to Rabbi Meir as well. And yet you see, b'shoygig, Rabbi Meir doesn't knas you. It's only if you do it on purpose. Rabbi Meir says don't eat that fruit because you did an avera with it. But if you do it by mistake, it's almost like, if you do it by mistake, we say, okay, you weren't supposed to do it, but the food is kosher. But if you did it on purpose, then don't eat it. So we see b'shoygig, Rabbi Meir lets you get away with it. And it says the Gemara, hachi hashta, again, Hastam over there, Gavra letakune kamekavin. He's trying to fix something. He's trying to eat some Shabbos food. Anan leikim v'liknesei. Are we going to knas him, get up and knas him? He means well. So therefore, we don't knas him if he does things by accident. But if he's metama, or like my case again, I like my case. If he spills milk by accident into somebody's cholent, so it's an accident. But what were you doing next to somebody else's cholent? What were you doing there? There, a mayor will knas you, shoygig got the mezid, and you have to pay for the damages if you do it by mistake. One more case, Tashma, come in here. Hamat will kalim b'Shabbos, if you toivel kalim on Shabbos, right? It's a keli that you bought from a guy, and you're supposed to stick it into the mikvah. You're not supposed to stick it in the mikvah on Shabbos because it's like making the keli usable on Shabbos. So midrabanan, it's you're doing an aveira. If someone did it anyway, b'shoygig, if it's by mistake, yishtamish behem, you could use it on Shabbos. But mezid, if you do it on purpose, lo yishtamish behem, don't use it. So again, why don't we knas shoygig? Maybe you'll come to do it mazid. That's the Gemara's question. Answers the Gemara, the same idea. How can you compare? Hasam over there, Gavra l'tahure monika mekavin. He's trying to do good. He's trying to be metaher his vessel so he can use it. So he doesn't mean bad. Anan leikin v'leikin say, are we going to knas him if he does it by mistake? By mistake, we let you say you use it on Shabbos. But if you metame somebody's food or you make treif somebody's food, so then, even if you do it by mistake, we're going to knas you because once again, what were you doing by somebody else's food? So we're going to knas you shoygig got the mezid that you have to pay for it. Now the Gemara says, "V'rami Rabbi Yehuda adrura b'Rabbanan." Rabbi Yehuda against Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda was the opinion is that even Rabbi Yehuda was never the opinion that you guys are shoygid or to mezid. If it's a din Rabbanan, that means if it's something to do with Rabbanan, Rabbi Yehuda said only b'mezid you have to pay, but Rabbanan and b'shoygid you don't have to pay. So my example or the mitame example, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you don't have to pay if you do it by mistake. If you accidentally made somebody's cholent treif or you mitame somebody's food, you don't have to pay. But only if you do it on purpose, because this whole Isser is only Drabanan. You don't really do any damage. Drabanan said you did damage. Why is it the Raisa you didn't do any damage? Because Hezek, Shein, and Nikah, you can't tell that you did damage. So Rabbi Yehuda said only, the Rabbanan said if you do it on purpose, you have to pay. But if you do it by mistake, you don't have to pay. The Tanya, so let me ask you a contradiction. The Tanya, we learned to the Brisa, we go to Nadalat on the base. Nafluvin Ispatsu. The din is that if you have a walnut that's called a perech walnut, now that is orla, right? If it's orla, normally if this perech walnut is such a very expensive type of walnut, and let's call it a perech walnut, if it falls into 1,000 of other walnuts, and in this walnut, perech walnut was orla, it wouldn't become nullified. It wouldn't become batal, because it's a davar chashav, it's something special. But Rabbanan said it would never become nullified. But if you crush it and then you spill it into other walnuts, then since it's not recognizable, it becomes batal. Okay, what happens? Naflu, it fell in as a whole walnut. This expensive walnut, which is orla, it's a perech walnut that fell into a bunch of other walnuts. Then you crushed all the walnuts. So now you muvatal isel lechatchila. Really, before you crushed it, all the walnuts were aser. But now you crushed it, and so there's no egoizi perach anymore because you can't tell what was the egoizi perach. So echad shoygig ve'echad mezid lo ya'alu divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that it will not become nullified even if you did it by mistake. Even if you did it by mistake, it would not become nullified. All these walnuts still remain aser even after it became crushed. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda Shimon Aimer says like this: Bishoygig, if you crush it after it fell in yalu, then we say take one out. Of course, that's orla. We'll assume that's the orla walnut, and you can eat the rest. In other words, it becomes nullified. But mezid, if you did it on purpose and you crushed them all, lo ya'alo, then it would not become nullified. But what do you see over here? Ramei and Rabbi Yehuda are both on the same team that said, echad shoygig ve'echad mezid. We say, because you violated an Issa D'Rabbanan, we punish you and say, lo yalu, it doesn't work. It doesn't become batal. So the Gemara explains, this whole idea that it doesn't become nullified is only a din D'Rabbanan, because mid Raisa, we always know, achri rabin, you go after the right. 1 and 2, if you have a one item that falls into 2 items, it becomes batal. Rabbanan, who the Rabbanan made up this gezerah and said that if it's 1 in 1,000, a geizi perach will never become batal. V'kakonis, Rabbi Yehuda says, okay, it's in Rabbanan, but I'm still punishing you that echad shoygig ve'echad mezid lo yale, it will never become nullified even after you crush the walnuts, because the Rabbanan made up this din that a geizi perach never becomes batal. So how can we rectify? Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda is always of the opinion that we don't punish a person when he does it by mistake. And says the Gemara, Hasam Hainu Tamed Rabbi Yehuda is only over there. Rabbi Yehuda went strict. Bishum the Ase la'arume, because it leads to an artifice. In other words, it leads to deception, because a person will say, "Oh, I did it by mistake, but really he did it on purpose. So in that case, since it leads to a deception, so Rabbi Yehuda said you'll punish him that if it fell as a whole walnut and then you crushed it, even if you crushed it and tried to dissolve it and make it all one, we're not going to say it becomes batal, even if you did it by mistake, because a person will say that he did it by mistake and really did it on purpose. One more piece to finish this till the Mishnah. And then we have a steer against Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi said in this brisa that you guys are mazed, but you don't say shoige got the mazed. In other words, we don't punish you if you do something by mistake. Now, the Rabbi Yossi is going to go so lenient that you don't even punish somebody if he does it on purpose. The Tanam we learned in the Mishnah, Natiyah shel arla. If you have a sapling of arla, imagine a little tree of arla that you replanted it. And these things became mixed up with other little saplings that are not arla, or they're not klayim, whatever. It's the other 1,000 trees. The other trees are not arla trees. So one sapling is arla trees, and amongst many little young trees. You're not supposed to collect any fruits from these trees because there's an arla tree. You have to wait until 3 years go by, because one of these trees is an arla tree. You just don't know which one. If you did collect fruits from all these trees, make sure there's 200 against the one tree. So each tree should have like 200 trees to correspond to it, a ratio of 200 to 1. That's the bittel of arla. Don't do it on purpose, because if you do it on purpose, then it doesn't become batal. It's only if you do it by mistake, then we let you get away and say, okay, it becomes nullified. Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi Yossi says, even if you do it on purpose, it becomes nullified with 1 in 200. So we see that Rabbi Yossi says that not only by mistake we say it's nullified, that even if you did it on purpose and you collect it from these fruits, and one of these trees are arla trees, just make sure that you have 200 against it. So how could it be? Rabbi Yossi doesn't offer a knas for somebody who does something on purpose. So the Gemara answers, Hayit ba'Allah, Amarava. Over there, it's a very unusual case. Nobody plants an arla tree amongst other saplings without making a sign that's an arla tree. Chazaka ein adam oises karma b'nitiyachas. The assumption is that most people will not disqualify or make all his vineyards usher by planting there one sapling that's not kosher. He never does that. A person doesn't not make his sapling. It doesn't answer his vineyards with one sapling that's not kosher. So therefore, since it's an odd case, Rabbi Yossi lets you get away with it and said if b'diavad you did it and you b'mezid, you collected all the fruits, it's not going to become aser. Okay, new Mishnah. Hakehanim, and that we'll do a few more lines in the Gemara, and then we'll stop. Hakehanim shepiglu b'migdash. The kahanim, they're supposed to shecht for you and bring the blood to the mizbeach and spray it on the mizbeach. What happens? They thought a bad thought. Means they thought a piggle thought. A piggle thought means that you're gonna they're thinking that the meat you're gonna eat it a week later. So that the Torah says if the Kohanim think the wrong thoughts while they're shechting the carbon, while they're sprinkling the carbon, the carbon becomes treif. So in his mind, the Kohen passled your carbon. So mezidin, if he did it on purpose, chayav, then the Kohanim have to have good insurance because they have to pay you back for your losses if they did it on purpose. They said, "Oh, I did it." Let's say somebody was working with somebody and helping him make tahar food. Tahar food is make sure that there's no tumah in it. Let's say they were preparing food and they're making sure that it's tahar food. People used to eat only tahar food. So the waiters, one of your workers is working with you. And he said to you, "Oh, by the way, the taharis that I was working with became tameh." So you trust him. Let's say he's a kohen, he's working with you, trying to shecht your karbonis and make sure that your karbonis is kosher. And the kohen said to you, that carbon that I worked with you, this paglu, I made it piggle. Neman, he's believed. Avo, we believe him, we trust him. We don't know if he did it, but we trust him that it became tame or the carbon became pigel. Avo amaloi taharis sisim chabiyan ploini nitnu. Uzvakan shasisim chabiyan ploinis paglu einanemen. If he said the taharis, he meets you a week later and says the taharis that I did with you last week on that day became tame. Oh, by the way, that carbon that you bought last week, I was thinking a bad thought, and therefore it's not a kosher carbon. So the Gemara says einanemen. A person's not believed. So why is it the Maishna ratio, Maishna Sneva? Why, when he tells it to you right then and there, when the fruits are in front of you, and when the carbon is in front of you, and he says there's something happened over here and it's puzzle or it became tameh, you believe him. And how come a week later, when he says the same story, you don't believe him? Amar Rabbi says like this: Kol shebiyodei neman. If he is capable of doing it right now, if he's capable of doing it right now, then you believe. In other words, when he says, "Oh, the taharis that I worked with you became tameh," technically he can make it tameh right in his hand. So if he tells it to you, we have to believe him because he can. If he really wanted to apostle it, he can do it in front of your face. But that's what. But over here, when it's a week later, he can't apostle it right now. He can't make the carbon not kosher right now. So it's just his word. His word a week later. So we don't believe him. And Rava says. And this is where we'll stop. Rava says, "Kegoin the ashkechai v'loy amalei midei u'lebasahachi ashkechai v'amalei." Rava says that the reason is that it's talking about the reason why you don't believe him in this case number 2 is because you met him once before. He didn't say anything. He didn't bother. He didn't tell you that it became tameh. He didn't tell you that the carbon was not kosher. And then you meet him a few days after that, and then now he wakes up and says it's tameh or it was not kosher. Oh, so why is he saying that now? Why didn't he tell you when he met you the first time? It must be that he's trying to chepe you and now get to you. So the first time, of course, he wasn't gonna tease you or anything like that because it really did not become tameh. Now he meets you, he wants to tell you that the carbon became tameh or the food became tameh. The carbon became to puzzle and the food became tameh. We don't believe him because we think he's lying. Okay, we'll continue some of the stories tomorrow. Be'ezus Hashem, Nun Dalet Amud Beis.
Yes.